Okay, so this is Saint the Legend. This is uh Master 9000, whoever you wanna call me by. I was just messing around in trials today, dealing with all that YouTube ban stuff. Has been driving me nuts because the system is really broken. But that will be for another video. On this video, I want to show you how to create a helicopter using object info data sources and the generic animation setup events with the object position event, the intervals, and the data sources in coordination with any state events and triggers, in coordination with different orientation specifications, if I said that correctly. Um, So I created a primitive helicopter using primitive shapes like triangles, squares, rectangles, and then I used some, mimic long objects to mimic the propellers of a helicopter. So this strategy works a lot, but there's a problem. And I wouldn't say Trials is a very good editor, but Trials is not a good editor because Trials is not good. Trials is not good at all because it's good, but it's not perfect. It's not like a real video game design engine. Trials doesn't have joints. The joints in Trials are physical joints. The physical joints can only operate when you move the physics bubble on command. So in this editor, the physics bubble is around the rider and will remain around the rider the whole time and follow the rider wherever the rider is on my map. It's right here. So this physics bubble right here is the rider's physics bubble. You can animate that and put it up nearby the helicopter, but if you do that, then it's going to screw up the game. So let's say if you wanted to make a helicopter shoot up the rider, but then if the physics event is now sharing the properties of the helicopter, so you pretty much you can't do two things at the same time, which is horrible. So if maybe the Trials editor team can invent uh, multiple physics bubbles for different objects. I don't know if that would destroy the game's engine, but in the real engines for video game design engines, you have something called physical joints, where it doesn't matter if it's a person or any object. I can put two physical joints here, and it doesn't matter what orientation my object will spin in the coordination of the animation. It will stay intact no matter if its position is rotated. I tried to manually adjust the orientation based on the orientation of the whole setup, and it's bugged. It doesn't work. So it's the same bank. I even made it even faster. It doesn't work. So when I animate this helicopter, the orientation is changing of this propeller over here. So now the propeller is, even though the orientation is changing, it's not understanding what the orientation is. So it's screwing up, it's fucking up, it's all over the place, and the orientation is completely screwed. And I cannot, maybe I can adjust this, but it's going to take like so many animation player combining cards to get it right. And that's just really poorly designed. I'm not trying to go against the Trials editor. Obviously, the Trials editor is very good, but don't expect it to be the best thing ever. Now, I've seen other maps before where people perfected certain abilities, right? I'm sure there is a way, but I'm sure there is not a way to do two things at the same time. When I seen a helicopter event, I usually saw the helicopter and the bike probably frozen and then unfrozen. It's always one other thing at the time. It's not two things at a time. So this is going to be another helicopter tutorial. So obviously for people who are not new to rider animations, right, you would need an impulse or the animation would never even move. You would need a data source. That you don't need the data source, but the data source makes it more flexible in the animation. You could do an end time, start, end start, how fast it's going, startup how fast, offset ticks, looping, and all these pre-made functionalities are already in there in the linear data source. Okay? Now, the object position event does the same thing, except it just positions the object wherever it is in the world. Now the object info data sources, well, what I'm just doing is I'm having one, and remember I have to have an impulse or this is never going to work. Remember, the local setting and everything has to be unchecked. If it's local, it goes somewhere else. If it's not local, it will remain and restain to this object at all times. You can use a to-input operator to adjust the distance above or below the selected center object. A higher value means up, a lower value means down, negative and positive, right? So meaning that I just use object info data sources to triangulate the object's position, and this is the coordinates of the world orientation of my object, position X, Y, and Z. Now I'm obviously going to select the propellers because I want the propellers to follow my dummy object, which is inside this. So that I have a dummy object in there, you see. If you use trials, you know that's the dummy object. So now X, Y, and Z will follow that, but I need it to tell it what to follow. So I put my X, Y, and Z and marked it to the dummy object. Now the propellers will follow the dummy object, no matter if the dummy object will move at all times. But if you confuse the orientation of the object will screw up, and that would be terrible for your map. Now while you're doing this, the object might, you see, it's like flipping all over the place because I have this thing trying to correct it. So that doesn't work. So it's always moving with the object, but see, when it turns, it's still centered with the object, but the orientation is getting screwed, but the object is still center pointed with the object. So when the object doesn't turn, we're going to just turn off the bank here, because that's the turning angular animation. Now when it moves, it always stays with the object, no matter what. So remember, the orientation, if it's up, down, on the side propellers, if this propeller turns upwards on an angle, like it goes, like I'll do it manually and then I'll reset it. Like this, for this propeller, if I rotate the object like this or like this, that propeller will always follow. But if I try to change the orientation like this or like this, it will screw up, but it will still follow the center point of the object. Now I'm obviously going to reset my orientation with the undo button. Now, for people that want to make helicopters and stuff, this is a very easy way to set it up. I hope this was a very useful tutorial. This tutorial is not for beginners, so if you are a beginner, you may want to know how all these things work by watching Cannibal Shokun's tutorials on the Red Links channel. This is just a side tutorial, user-created tutorial for people that understand all of his tutorials. Remember, his tutorials are beginner tutorials for you to get set up, and he has pretty advanced stuff too. But if you want to get into the basics of creating a helicopter or creating some sort of physical mechanical complexity machine, then you're going to have to watch tutorials like mine or tutorials that other people made, like Chromatic Bog or Core 2 Tom or other of the, the favorable users like Swamp Balls and stuff, because they offer more in-depth tutorials based on a specific item. Because if you just do an overall duration, an overall of everything, people are not going to understand. People need to see a visual standpoint of view, like how to animate a helicopter or how to correct angular orientations within an object following another object, and a visual example. I am showing you an visual example right here. I'm trying to make you understand. I'm using the old object info data source setup. I'm sure there is new ways you can use vectors, right? But I'm more comfortable with this because I understand how it works. Once you understand how something works, then you can perfect it and actually make it better. So this tutorial will probably go up on my new channel. I'll probably throw it on my copyrighted band channel, the Master 9000. I'm going to have to make this video a little short. Cannot go into describing certain, different types of things, you know what I'm saying? Really tired, it's the morning. But I got up knowing that this would work. So if you wanted to make a helicopter, you can make a helicopter. But remember, changing the orientation of a certain object will screw up, and it just takes 10 times more editing, okay? Now, I hope this little tutorial helicopter worked without using physical joints. It works, but it's not the best way. If you just want, if I advise, if you're going to make a helicopter game like this, I advise that the helicopter is within range of the physics bubble. The physics bubble can be 90 meters. Okay, so I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm going to take a collision box, all right? And then I'm going to make a sphere. And then I'm going to say 90 meters. Look, I'll give you a range how much 90 meters is. Okay, 90 meters. This is how much 90 meters is. So let's say that's the rider down there. I'm going to lock it at a driving line. Now 90 meters. If the helicopter is within this range, within the rider, 90, which is very little, really, if you think about it. But really in this game, if you try to do stuff beyond the driving line, a lot of glitchy stuff will happen because this engine has a functionality where if objects are too far away, they'll start to disappear as you get closer, which is horrible, and there's no way to really inflict this and the editor has a lot of bugs. You see the shadowy glitch, and these should be transparency. You should be able to air the transparency of this object so you could see through it. There's no transparency. I can't see through the object, which is terrible. In Trials Evolution, they actually had that functionality, but other functionalities were terrible. That's why I never made maps in Trials Evolution. But it's getting better, and this is just another way to set up a gaming engine to make your functionalities work. I hope this tutorial worked. I just wanted to throw this up real quick, so I'm not going to save this map because I already know how to do it. I know how to set everything up. You could also save this whole thing as an item and save it to your favorites. So remember, there's so many things you could do with the Trials editor, but you can't do everything. So just remember that. It's pretty good, but it's not the best. And there is some users that, whoa, they did that. That takes a lot of work. Yes, it can because it's not perfect, right? So this is a tutorial for how to make a helicopter. And just be watching out on your orientation of each object. So this is not even for a helicopter. This is for if you want to learn animations. So I will do links below and all the tags or whatever, and see if YouTube doesn't screw it up, because YouTube's system is screwing up because the algorithms are fucking up and they're horrible. So I'm sorry I swore it in this video, but kind of pissed off, and I just wanted to share a little knowledge with you guys. Alright, see you.